MD CEO, Bristol Meyers Squibb, and is going to talk us about transformation of cancer treatment through immuno-oncology.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for the opportunity, Monica. Thank you. It's really an honor to be here. I must say I am an Italian physician. I graduated in Rome, and I did leave Italy in 1989. I came back, and then I had to leave again. And so it's a great pleasure, actually, to be here, because as much as I think I've become a global citizen, obviously I remain very attached to my own country. I'm going to cover something very different. And before I do that, let me just say I work and manage a very large multinational company. I'm quite proud, actually, of the fact that Italy is our 5th largest operation around the world, not only because of our revenues, but also because of the number of clinical trials we do in Italy, and because of fairly sophisticated manufacturing that takes place in Italy and actually serves many of our worldwide markets. Now, I said I have a very different topic because my topic is about a revolution that is happening in cancer care. And it is a revolution that is happening around the world, and it requires strong cooperation between the industry, the academic community, treating physicians, and clearly institutions. And I must say today is a really interesting day because at the White House there is a very big event where Vice President Biden is personally involved with what we are calling here the Cancer Moonshot Initiative, where the government has made a pledge to accelerate research in cancer. But I also want to say that everything I heard today, and I had heard over the last few months about increasing investment in research, creating larger centers of research in Italy that have critical mass to compete internationally, and clearly developing a much more open approach in the interaction with the industry. They're really very good signs that tell me that Italy can play a really big role as this evolution takes place. Incidentally, oncology, cancer care actually is one of the areas in which Italy has excelled over many years. And in fact, many of the standards of therapy today, at least some of them, clearly have been the results of the work from Italian research institutions. Now, to what I want to cover today in the next 9 minutes. You know, there is something really interesting happening in oncology. We are finally understanding how a patient's immune system can be enabled to fight cancer. And this concept has actually been around for many, many years. But the concept of immuno-oncology never really worked because many of the medicines that were being developed did not have enough efficacy, and a lot of them had a lot of toxicity. And so just 10 years ago, physicians that believed in immuno-oncology, as we call it, typically had a very, very small room in the basement of scientific conferences, and nobody really believed in them. For a number of reasons that have to do primarily with our experience in immunology as a company, we decided to invest in a partnership with a very small biotech company in California called Medarex, and started the relationship with one or two researchers, one by the name of Jim Allison, and a center called Johns Hopkins here in the US, and we started investing in this field. And at the beginning, you know, one of our molecules was called ipilimumab. We decided to study it in melanoma. It didn't really work, we thought, because only a few patients responded. And some patients actually at the beginning appeared to have a worsening of the disease. With melanoma, you can tell because the cancer is in the skin, so it's very visible, unfortunately. What we saw was that the lesions became bigger. So there were two companies competing at that time, and I use the word competing because this is really what we were doing. One of the two companies abandoned the research efforts. We decided instead to hear from researchers what their interpretation was. And in fact, what appeared to be a progression of the disease was the immune system getting to work. creating an inflammation that appeared like a progression, but in fact, the patient was responding. And so you fast forward, this molecule was approved everywhere around the world, including Italy, 6 years ago. At that point, if you had late-stage melanoma diagnosed, you had a 5 to 10% probability of being alive 12 months later. Today, we have patients that have been followed for 10 years, and about 20 to 25% of patients are still alive. So that was a clear revolution. That was the first step. So researchers got to work. Immuno-oncology became more fashionable. There were significant investments being made by the industry, but also public institutions in immuno-oncology. We ourselves decided to spend about a third of our research budget in the area of immuno-oncology right away. And we discovered that there was another way of activating the immune system through a different pathway, which is called PD-1. We developed a molecule, not only in melanoma, but in a very large number of different cancers, with an unprecedented effort by the industry to advance the field in immuno-oncology. We were able to demonstrate doubling of response versus ipilimumab in melanoma, but also the ability to double the probability of patients with lung cancer and kidney cancer to be alive after 1, 2, or 5 years. All of that has happened in the last 5 years. It has been an extraordinarily rapid progress. And today, just in my company, we have over 50 clinical trials in more than 20 tumor types that are investigating the role of this one medicine. And every time we look, actually, we do find that very often we are able to double the response rate of patients and double the probability that they will be alive after 1, 2, 5 years. It doesn't always work. My company specifically had a very negative clinical trials 2 months ago. And that's the nature of what we do in biomedical research. So the future is bright because as much as we've made progress, we are just at the beginning. Still many cancers for which we don't have an answer. At Bristol Myers Squibb, we have actually advanced 8 new medicines into clinical research. And we believe that the secret will be in using 2 or more of them at the same time. In melanoma, for example, now we have 60% of patients responding and 20% have a complete response, meaning they have no sign of the disease after they've gone through treatment. And so combination therapy is really going to be the secret. Having said that, and just to conclude, we are not going to be able to do it on our own. You can do the math, and some of my colleagues are experts in data. If you have 10 medicines and you want to test different ways of combining every 2 of them at the same time, you would have to have a very, very large number of combinations. In order to do that, there isn't enough money, there aren't enough patients, and there aren't enough physicians to do that empirically. So we're going to have to work with people that understand big data and are going to be able to predict for us which ones are going to work and which ones are not going to work before we put them into clinical trials. We are already doing that at Bristol Myers Squibb. One of the things that we did well from the very beginning was to look for the 10 best translational research centers around the world and create a consortium with them right away to advance the science. One of them is in Italy, and that has been extremely helpful. The second thing we did, we created a very large network with community-based oncologists and treating physicians, because that's where you have patients where you can do clinical trials, and those are ultimately the physicians you need to be educating so that your medicines are used. Clearly, the future of cancer care can continue to be really bright if we all work together, if there are young researchers and scientists that find access to funds and can participate in a really exciting research program, if there are institutions that created the right environment for science to progress, and if there are industries that are willing to invest in the community to make sure that science advances quite quickly. I think there is a lot of that happening in oncology already in Italy, but I do believe that there also, we are just at the beginning, because I think Italian scientists could contribute to a much larger degree to one of the most fascinating and, quite frankly, rewarding fields in medicine today. Just to close truly one last time, I can tell you that over the last 5 years, I've been really privileged to be able to meet patients in the street, in the office, at a meeting that tell me that their life has been prolonged by one of our medicines. And it actually has made me really humble as a person and as a physician. And I think it is actually a much bigger motivation for me to find ways of really partnering across the board to make sure that we don't waste any time and we make all the progress that is possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Giovanni, for this very interesting